There's a whole bunch of Pocono Medical Center workers here. He's the chairman of the board of the institution. We've tried numerous times to make an appointment. They're on strike, standing up for their rights. We really asked Mr. Olson to take 5 minutes of his time and come down and talk to the frontline caregivers at the hospital of which he is on the board. Could you please relay that message to him?
They want to keep their union, and yet he's not allowing them to do that.
And what's the point with PSLabor?
So this is his company. And so we want him to understand that it's not just something inside the walls of the hospital. This is a community issue. These are people who take frontline caregivers who take care of people in the community. And he's in the community as well. And so we need to make sure we talk to him.
So what did you just hear? Well, let me tell you what you heard. You heard a group of healthcare employees storming a bank, protesting. Why would healthcare employees storm a bank? I'm going to tell you why. This happened in Pennsylvania. A group of workers went on strike, and they knew they needed to put pressure on the hospital, but they didn't do it on the hospital grounds. They chose to do it at a bank because what they found out was a member of the board of directors at the healthcare system was the president of the local bank. And they knew that the public pressure was the exact kind of pressure that the hospital didn't want. So they stormed the bank, and they caused chaos and a melee, and well, that's what you get. See, unions aren't the type of organizations that look for the weakest link and ignore it. No, they actively search out that weak link. They bust that weak link wide open, and they take both ends of the chain, and they swing it and they bang on whatever they have to get the results they want. Today we're going to explore this topic further. I'm joined today by Rick Torres, President and CEO of Permanent Solutions Labor Consultants. Mr. Torres is a former high-level union official, and one of his tasks when he was on the union side was to put together several mergers of high-profile labor unions in healthcare in order to increase membership and to create more of a perception of power. I'm also joined today by Cliff Hammond, a seasoned labor attorney with Nemeth Burwell in Detroit. Today, Mr. Hammond is a management side attorney, but in a former life, he was also an attorney with the SEIU. Mr. Hammond knows the union inside and out from both perspectives. I'm also joined today by Maureen Henson, a seasoned HR executive with many years of experience in a healthcare organization. Ms. Henson has seen several unionizing attempts. She's put together programs that not only are designed to help keep the unions out of the healthcare systems, but also to help drive employee engagement and to create a positive work experience for the workers, which was designed to not only keep them union-free, but also to help increase the level of satisfaction with the patients and the guests of the healthcare system. In all reality, that's what that boils down to in healthcare. Positive employee relations equals a positive experience for the customer, equals a positive public perception. So let's get started today. This is PSLabor Talk. What makes healthcare a consistent target in the eyes of the union? Cliff?
Well, one of the biggest things, obviously, is that healthcare has a lot of money, and it's a growth industry. So you have deep pockets, and you have somebody who can leave. If you think about it, in manufacturing, one of the things that historically has been one of the problems for unions is if you become successful and it becomes uncompetitive, they leave. In healthcare, you've got a growth industry. People are getting older. They need more healthcare. There's been an availability issue with insurance. It's become greater. And as a result, what unions see is a sitting target with lots of money. And as the steel and glass goes up on the outside of the building, people say, well, they must have money, and unions go over there, and they're a recurring target, because if you don't win today, you can come back tomorrow, because you're not going to shut down the shop. You're going to continue to be there. So I think that's the obvious reason, is they're there, they have deep pockets, and they're accessible.
Yeah, I think that it's just like Willie Sutton, the old 1930s famous bank robber, said when they asked him why he robbed banks. He said that's because that's where the money's at. The same thing within healthcare. And Cliff's correct. I mean, they can't relocate. You have, and right now you have a shortage of healthcare workers, nurses, and other professionals, and it gives them a leverage in healthcare.
Maureen, you've been in healthcare for a while, and you have lots of experience. What do you see in healthcare that makes them such a viable target?
Well, I think these reasons that Cliff and Rick put forth are certainly valid, but it's a very labor-intensive industry. It's the most regulated industry in the world. Nuclear power used to be, but now healthcare has taken that number one spot. working conditions are not always optimal for the employees. There are a lot of increased safety issues in terms of worker safety, lots of mandatory overtime, and the staffing ratios continue to be a real problem. The healthcare industry emphasizes quality and safety from the patient perspective, but they don't necessarily emphasize it from the employee perspective.
I think that's a good point. Maureen brings up that if you think about the growth industries in the last several decades, public employment has obviously been the highest growth rate. And what makes healthcare very similar to the public sector is the fact that it's highly regulated. So if you're a union, you can't, you're not just looking solely at getting to the employees and organizing them, but you can utilize the stakeholders in the community, and you can also go to the people who issue certificates of need. When you want to upgrade your medical equipment and you have to go to a licensing board, guess who's going to be there? So it's a place that you can actually leverage the political aspects as much as you can, these aspects that Maureen's talking about, because of the regulatory politicalization of healthcare. I think that that's also become one of the easier sticking points for healthcare providers, is that they have to also go out there and be a leader in the community, and also they're at the will of the political powers that be to give them certificates to be able to grow and provide the services they want. So labor is able to attack those points.
Yeah, and the what attracts them as far as unions to healthcare also is what we used to call I did extensive healthcare organizing across the country. What we used to call a soft target healthcare, we used to call a soft target because of all those things. It's you look at hospitals, it's basically a public institution. The public can walk in there, the public can go and have lunch there, so they can get inside. It's very hard for them to put a brick wall or gate around the hospital. It's impossible. And then you're talking about emotional issues. You're talking about like in long-term healthcare facilities also. So it's an easy target for them to get into. And people are emotional because they take their families there because they're sick. So it's very easy to target them.
Let's talk about that some more. Let's talk about the emotional levels in healthcare campaigns. There have been some real impressive strikes and real impressive labor issues out there directly involved with healthcare, where we've watched, and everyone on this podcast has seen it, these incredible amounts of emotional levels that really drive the union's point home with the workers. How is it that the union is so easily able to elevate these emotions, and how does that affect their ability to organize workers?
Healthcare workers actually enter the profession because they feel that calling, that compassion, that caring. They enter the profession because of the heart. And so emotionally, they're very much attached to the issues. They're attached to, their patients. And I think that's the difference. It's not just a 9-to-5 job necessarily, but it's really a calling for them. So there's lots of emotion around it.
Maureen, it's when years ago I was putting together with the George Meany Institute with Richard Bensinger from the AFL-CIO, and we were putting together the advanced organizing tactics for the future with organizing directors and lead organizers across the country in all the unions within the AFL-CIO at the time, which encompassed most of the major unions. And one of the things that, and you bring up a great point, one of the things that we were talking about, in fact, I made that same point. We talked about why it was hard to organize healthcare workers back years ago. It's because they came into healthcare because they cared. They cared about the patients. They cared about, doing a quality job, and it was very important for them. It was an emotional issue for them. And what the response that we used to get across the country was, well, why do I need a union? I didn't get into this and go to school and become a professional because I want to fight with management. What we decided that we had to do years ago when we were putting together the curriculum for advanced healthcare organizing was we had to take the message away from the hospitals and the healthcare management. We had to, and you see how things have changed so much in the last 15 years. Is now when at the time when workers said, well, I'm proud to be a nurse, or I'm proud to be a tech, or I'm proud to be a doctor, it's because we care about our patients. Now what they're saying And it took years to twist this around. Now what they're saying, hey, listen, I joined the union because I care about my patients, because I care about having enough gurneys, because I care about having the right amount of equipment, because I care about all these things.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the unions have twisted the message on the hospitals and the healthcare management. They twisted that and took the healthcare management's their position away from them and are using it to organize workers.
One of the things that I saw when I was with the union was that when you go into a trucking industry and you do that job, or manufacturing industry, they're very important jobs, but the one thing that healthcare has that's different than any other industry is it is life and death. And you talk about emotions, when you have a person who believes that they're actually helping somebody to live, and the union comes in and they start talking to you and they start accentuating the issues about overtime, understaffing, things that are getting to you as in human nature. I think I'm not getting paid while people in the higher positions are getting paid more. There's inequality in the pay structure. Those benign issues become elevated to the next level because it's like, I'm a professional. I do this for a living. I'm helping people. I'm helping them live, and you're not respecting me. And it helps accentuate the respect factor that you don't get in other industries. And that's what I saw when you went into a healthcare setting, especially into a hospital, is because even at the lower levels of the skill area, those individuals started to take more and more pride in what they did as people started telling them, look how important you are in the chain of events that lead to people becoming well, becoming healthy. And I think that's what unions do extremely well, is they sell that point to people until they believe it, or they take the people who do believe it and have them sell it to others.
Well, they started the initiative. I mean, you look at safe needle campaigns. You look at all the initiatives that they started across the country. Things that you can't argue with. You're talking about staffing and other issues that lead to safety concerns. How can you argue with it? But it's not like that. The hospital management or the healthcare management hasn't been concerned about these things or being active in correcting or improving these issues. But it's the unions that got ahead of the game and started, promoting it. So it seemed like they were the only ones that were concerned about the patients, and the hospitals were responding to what the unions were doing.
Right. And again, every inequity becomes a health issue. If you're not giving me the proper amount of time off, or you're not following scheduling guidelines, it's jeopardizing people's well-being. It's jeopardizing patient health. It's an easy jump from whatever the issue is to the next level of you're harming people. And I think that's the emotional level you don't get in any other sector. It really is unique to healthcare.
Well, let's look at something from a legal standpoint. So, Cliff, this is for you. Mm-hmm. We know in the 70s and 80s there were changes in labor laws that dramatically decreased the number of union campaigns. Basically took away some of the reasons that employees would need a union with some of these laws that protected them.
Sure.
But here we are today, and we've seen more and more laws that directly affect the union's ability to organize, which actually seem to be giving them more of an upper hand again. What changes have we seen recently that give the union this upper hand?
Well, I think the changes you're seeing is everybody knows the trend nationally has been that labor has been losing ground in a lot of industries, but healthcare is one of those industries that's been staying the same and in some places growing significantly. And one of the reasons why is there are certain rules that healthcare has that's applied to them that make it more advantageous for unions to go in. Let's take a look at the number one legal change that's happened in the last year and a half or so. And it's going to continue to be the number one reason why unions are going to be successful, or at least are going to be confident they can be successful. And that is the element of what they call the micro unit. It used to be, as an employer, you could pretty much tell who was going to be in the union. You could take a look at your workers, you could evaluate it on a legal basis and say, this group of people here that does this type of shift, there was a pretty specific guideline who was going to be in, who was going to be out. You knew who your supervisor was, and you went accordingly, and you just planned. Whether you're union, anti-union, non-union, you knew what the game was. What happened was that the NLRB has changed that playing field. They've allowed now what they call micro units, small groups of people. Hypothetically now, all of a sudden, where it used to be you had to have all the people wall to wall, first shift, second shift, third shift, who did a particular type of job, and they had a common core, they would all have to be in the same group, and the union would have to get more than 50% of those people to vote to take them to be their union representative. Now, you could take the nurse aides on potentially the second shift on the second and third floor of a hospital, and that would be a group. Now, how would you know that's going to be the group? You won't know until the union picks it. They can select smaller groups of employees in certain areas, target them, slice them off from the bigger group, and then get in, and then start to grow from that area. You could potentially, because of this, have 14, 15 different unions and units within one employer. This fundamentally changes not only the strategy of the union because it makes it easier, obviously the smaller group, and if you look at success rates are higher when you have smaller numbers of people to organize. This legal change has allowed the unions to increase their winning percentage. It also allows them to get, when there's an access issue to employees, well, we don't have to access everybody. We don't need to know everybody in a large employer. We can just go over a small group, get our foothold, and then start to build. That's the number one change. But it's not just who you're going after, it's how you talk to the people. And what the NLRB has done systematically over the last several years is they have increased the NLRB's reach over non-union employers to social media. What are people saying about the employer? They're allowing for unfair labor practices to be filed against non-union employers for things that people say about their working conditions. So they're going out and they're filing unfair labor practice charges, and then of course the unions can use those. Access to healthcare facilities. That's a big problem. They just invalidated a rule that said that people that were off duty couldn't come in except for certain employer-sponsored functions. Well, they said, no, that's overbroad. Essentially, they don't want you to be able to bring your people back in off duty unless you let the union come in. I mean, this is really a significant change. If you can't control who's coming in and out of your building, obviously the union makes it easier for them to come in and organize. So you limited the size of the unit. You try to take down barriers to who can and can't come back into your building for off duty. And then you limited the speech ability plus the supervisory status. What's your number one way to attack what is and is not your message? If your supervisors are out there doing a good job, putting the company out there, telling the good story, putting down effective rules, and you know who they are and when they are going to work, you can control your workplace environment by getting your message out. But if you don't know who the supervisors are, which the LRB is starting to, again, although the law hasn't changed in around 12 years from the Supreme Court, their interpretation is becoming stricter and stricter on who is actually a supervisor, letting those people either, one, be in a union, or two, not take your message out to the people during an organizing campaign. That's significant because now you're controlled and limited in how you get your message out, who you can talk to, and unions expanding who it can go to, how it can get to those people. So these are major changes.
You know, one of the things as far as with the micro unions also, or the micro units, is it makes it easier to organize. Organizing is very expensive. We used to look at figures, national figures, and we used to estimate that it used to cost $3,000 to $4,000, and this was years ago. Average across the country to organize a worker. And obviously some are very easy, or almost without expense, and some are very, very expensive, especially in healthcare. It's very expensive because you have to have a certain type of organizer that understands healthcare, can go and actually and talk with the professionals in the hospitals. But what it does is it opens the possibility. This is one of the things that we used to work at as far as national strategies organizing, is to bring the unions together, because you can partition off a hospital and say, okay, we're going to go after this group, you're going to go after the other group, and it's going to lower the price down. Plus, it's going to increase the resources as far as manpower to go in and organizing these healthcare units also. So it gives them more resources as far as the professionals that need to go in there and talk with the healthcare workers, and it makes it a lot cheaper for them to go and organize. So now you're having the resources, whether it be media resources, manpower, the finances to go in and organizing these units. So instead of going after one unit, they can go after, you might have 5 hospitals in a system or 6 hospitals in the system, they can go after them all, where it will reduce the ability for management to be able to respond. So there's many other reasons with the micro units that are going to increase the possibility for unions to organize.
And if we have micro units and micro unions in there, what's that going to do for HR or executive management?
It's going to make it very difficult, because you're going to potentially have so many different unions, and now you're going to have to administer 14, 15 different contracts. I mean, it's hard enough to administer one contract. I mean, Maureen, obviously you've been in healthcare settings with unions. I mean, you can obviously talk to that point, but I mean, obviously logistically, it just makes it more fundamentally, one, it's less productive, and two, obviously when you're less productive, it's less cost effective.
Yeah, it certainly is going to add a lot of complexity to the employer-employee relationship as well. And when you have represented and non-represented employees within the same walls of that hospital, the way one group's treated versus another, that resonates with employees. They notice, and yet you have to follow the collective bargaining agreement. But the non-represented employees then begin to say, hey, what's in it for me? And that's always been a balancing act for any HR professional, having to address multiple units like that from a policy and wage perspective.
And also, Maureen, you're going to have a competitiveness within your workforce also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the whole thing is this is Maureen, you know this as well as anybody, that when in healthcare, you're always looking at your budget. What do we have money for this? Do we have money for that? You're always looking at your 2 years ahead. What is the cost going to be? The tremendous cost going to be if you have to, first of all, from the HR side, you have to deal with this competitiveness within your workforce, but also if you have to organize, contracts with 3 or 4 unions at the same time. That's going to be almost impossible for someone in in management to be able to do. I mean, the resources that you have, and then deal with the day-to-day issues that you have to deal. You know that better than anybody, Maureen.
Absolutely. I've had multiple different unions within the same facility in the last couple of roles that I've had, and it's very complex, and it certainly adds to cost. It adds to where you focus your efforts, and you are not focusing your efforts on a proactive employee engagement perspective, but you're more of a reactive human resources department because you're dealing with the issues on a day-to-day basis rather than trying to build in strategies to continue to engage your employees and their commitment to you.
Well, Maureen, let's dive into that a little bit deeper. What would you say that every professional in healthcare should know when they're considering on strategies to keep their union-free status and to work on building those positive employee relations within their workforce? And what key issues do you see with your time in HR and healthcare that really could be the catalyst for union activity that they can watch for now in order to start building that firewall between the unions and their workforce?
Well, I think the most important thing an HR professional has to do is ensure that there's fairness and consistency in application of policies. So often, we tend, in healthcare, we tend to move more toward aggressive discipline with employees because often you're dealing with life and death situations. So an error in manufacturing versus an error in healthcare when you're dealing with patients' care, life, prescriptions, medication administration, putting the wrong IV in or what have you, the significance of those errors are far greater, and therefore we tend in healthcare to move to a more aggressive disciplinary track, zero tolerance for those kinds of things. And I think as long as you're fair and consistent and across the board, treating all of those scenarios and situations, with the same fair-mindedness that you can, that's important. I also think employee involvement is critical. Too often, healthcare administrators make decisions based on the finances, based on the bottom line, and not necessarily with the impact on employees in mind. Very quick to lay off people when they have a bad month, or cut back hours, or send people home without pay, and that all is very impactful. It's always a challenge for HR administrators in healthcare to continue to champion the voice of the employees, if you will, to really act as their advocate. And that's what I would encourage any HR professional to continue to do. It's also important to address relationships between the physicians and the staff. The Joint Commission has come forth in the last couple of years with some new regulations with regard to physician disruptive behavior. But again, the healthcare administration tends to turn an eye away from those kinds of issues because the physicians are, really the bread and butter behind the existence of a healthcare institution. So often staff gets very, very discouraged if they feel that the issues of a physician acting out are not addressed. Those are all the things that an HR person needs to get ahead of the game on. I've also seen a trend toward doing a better job at the recruitment aspect, putting in assessment tools, looking for the right customer service skills among staff so that they are there for the reason, not just for the reason of patient care, and that their heart's in it, and not just an individual that's there for clocking in and out, and not necessarily caring about their position. So a lot more emphasis on recruitment. Again, healthcare people, healthcare supervision tends to think of employees as simply there's somebody there to fill the spot on the shift, not necessarily really looking at the impact to the employees, looking at that employee relationship with the employer. So it's a very challenging place to be in terms of human resources in a healthcare setting.
Well, and there's one aspect with healthcare that is similar with other industries also is if there's not an openness. I mean, decisions have to be made, and you're always looking at finances. I mean, in that fact, that's what the unions will go after when they start a campaign to get the healthcare facility to give in and just recognize the union. But it's the same issues, because we're still dealing with people, and it's the same issues with any other industry as far as the openness, as far as talking to people. It's not so much the decisions that are made that affect everybody within the healthcare system. It's about explaining why you made those decisions, or explaining the finances. And so many times in healthcare, I think that it's even more protected is that, what are the financial situation of the healthcare system? Why are we making these decisions? And explaining them to the people so people feel that they're in the circle. They have an understanding of why these things are happening.
What you see in a lot of successful campaigns is an HR strategy of reactionism. When you have wild pendulum shifts in the way you treat issues, you will not have the consistency that Maureen talked about. And that is what the union's going to target. That's what people get upset about. The emotional values that they put into the decisions of the human resources is based upon whether they think they're being treated fairly. And when you see reaction because of, hey, it's a high-stakes game, it's life and death, we have to have a zero tolerance today, but tomorrow we're going to give so-and-so a break. You just made a huge crack in the credibility of the organization. So you have to have, and Rick has said this before, it's got to be in your DNA. You've got to put a policy together. You got to say, this is how we are going to treat our staff. This is how we're going to treat our relationships with the people that work here. This is how we're going to go forward. And the bottom line is, if you don't do that, you're going to have pendulum shifts that undermine everything that you've tried to produce for years, and it can go quickly.
We're fortunate, the people on this podcast. We're familiar with the tools and the union's tool shed when it comes to organizing. But let's see what we can provide for members of the executive leadership teams of healthcare. Just real quick, going around the table, what advice can we give leadership in healthcare? Go beyond HR. Let's go to the executive leadership. What advice can we give them to kind of give them a roadmap on how to circumvent the unions, how to help them maintain their union-free status?
The thing about it is when you're in a healthcare setting, you're such a big target. I mean, that's the Mercedes-Benz of organizing. They love healthcare because it's turned into a soft target, and it's easy to access hospital and healthcare systems. One of the things that you have to assume is that you're always under attack. I've been in campaigns, and in fact, I was in a campaign with the largest healthcare system in LA County years ago when I helped put together the organizing alliance between the California Nurses Association and the United Steelworkers. One of the first places that we went to was in LA County. And when the California Nurses Association was in there, they had 2 elections. We were in there for over a year, and I had people embedded in the healthcare system over a year, and management had no idea what was going on. And all these things that Marie was talking about, she brought up some fantastic examples and so did Cliff. But one of the things that happens is that you have to understand when a union embeds itself in that system, they're like termites eating at the wood slowly but surely. So all of these things that we know you need to do, just like Maureen was explaining, you need to do to keep the unions out. Every day, every minute of the day, the unions are in there, embedded in there, making sure that those things don't happen and creating, for a union to organize, they have to create turmoil within the facility. So and as Cliff said, and I say it all the time, is that you have to make staying union free part of your corporate DNA. You have to do these things, extensively. You have to continuously do these positive things and to communicate with your people. And the biggest cause of union organizing campaigns is a breakdown in the communication. Everybody seems to look at how they're going to prevent union organizing activity, and they look in the big scope of things. It's not the big scope of things. Having professionals who are frontline supervisors dealing with your people on a daily basis, common respect, common dignity, and if they, the communication has to be number one all the time. And it's those small things that will build up and build up and build up to where they're a brick wall and you can't break them down. So it's doing those small things, those simple things every day to keep yourself union free.
Yeah, I can tell you that one of the things that you'll see when you go into a successful union campaign is you'll see what everybody does. All healthcare officials, matter of fact, almost all successful manufacturing and service industry jobs will train and educate their staff. They will spend thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars over the course of years to continue educating. In the healthcare industry specifically, we see this constantly, how there will be a brand new program that will come out. Everybody's invigorated by it. The studies show that it's going to work. We're going to get people to buy into what we do. It's going to make people, the morale go up. It's going to make people more efficient. But the problem is, at the top level of management, we listen to the salesmanship, we read the records and the history of how this has worked in other facilities, we implement it, and then we don't check on it effectively. And if you are a healthcare manager and you're spending time, money, and effort into educating and training, whether it be your rank and file, whether it be your relationship with your stakeholders, or whether it be just simply a communication style or an education system, you have to build into whatever program you're spending money and time into an ability for you to evaluate the effectiveness of that program. And it has to be something that gets done contemporaneous and not well after the fact, because there are times when you will spend hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars over the course of a decade on a system of education that is worthless, because you will not have any knowledge of how it's working until you get a union campaign. Because what happens is people go through the system, it's not being effectively communicated. People are just simply taking the online communication system test, doing the test, walking out and not effectively implementing it. Testing, education has to be effective or get rid of it. And so for a top level manager or HR professional, the number one thing you can do is test and evaluate your money. See how your people are actually on the floor working and interacting with people. And that's what I would say is the key to keeping your facility not only union free, but also ensuring that your workers are providing good quality health care.
I think creating a culture of transparency and creating trust. I think so often there's a tremendous amount of distrust between the frontline direct patient care worker and the senior leadership team. And part of creating that trust is, as Cliff said, getting out, being visible around the clock, odd weekends, all shifts, rounding with employees, listening to what their issues are. So often they just want to be heard, not necessarily ready for a solution or expecting a solution, but they really want their voice heard. And I think that's truly very, very critical. And employee communication, I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, it's really the why behind their taking certain business actions. People will understand and be more accepting if they truly do understand. But when leadership sends out a mixed message, they're cutting employees' hours because of volume, but then they're building a new tower, or they're adding some renovation. Employees look at that and say, that's not going into my pocket. That's something that management's just doing, and they don't understand the correlation in some of the business decision making. I also think that often organizations don't align their mission, their vision. They don't align it with their people strategies, and I think that that's really critical. Is really living that mission. It's not just words up on a placard somewhere, but really showing and demonstrating through leadership's actions that they believe in that particular mission. I wanted to add one other thing. I think the reason unions are becoming more successful within the healthcare industry too is I think the faith-based healthcare systems are particularly challenged because so much of what they espouse in terms of faith-based care is also really the same values that the union comes forth with in terms of taking care of the workers. So I think the faith-based healthcare systems are even more challenged in terms of their leadership actions because traditionally, they've always sort of supported the same sort of values that a union puts forth. So I do think that's another challenge that leaders have in those organizations.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Maureen. In fact, when they talk, and I've spoken to many executives at faith-based hospitals, and when you talk, a lot of them are really conflicted on this issue because when you talk about social justice and unions, especially with healthcare, and we always had our special bishops or special clergy that would do a lot of work for us. And you start talking about social justice, is you put the contradictions right in their face. How can you talk about social justice when this is happening, when that's happening? So you're absolutely right, and also, Maureen, when you talk about the consistency of whatever you do, it can't just be high level ideas and theories. Hospital management has to roll their sleeves up and put their hands into it and really personally get involved and on a consistent level. And I think that's, as you said, that's some of the keys to staying union free.
And you know what? To go a little bit further on the faith-based comment, hospitals are so public. They're so in the public eye. They're so involved with the communities they're in. This really is a double-edged sword that they need to deal with. Because the unions, and Rick, we've had several conversations about this one-on-one where the unions use the public image against them.
Well, they will absolutely use the public image against them. And some of them have really crossed the line as far as putting up billboards. Were you badly treated today? Call this number. I mean, you look at the magnet status of hospitals where they spend years and how much money to acquire that elite status. And the unions, when they see that, it's a vulnerability, and that's one of the things that when I was the organizing director, we used to directly look at when we went into facilities, healthcare facilities. We would look at, okay, what are their vulnerabilities and how can we attack them and put them into a bad light and attack their community involvement and them as corporate citizens. So, I mean, these were the things that we looked at. The higher profile, the easier it was to attack them because they were vulnerable. So it's making sure that, I mean, in so many healthcare systems, they will go, you look at what they do for the community, you see all the involvement they have, you see all the good things that they do. Well, when I used to send my people in to go after healthcare systems, a lot of these healthcare systems are very reluctant to pat themselves on the back or to boast about all the good things that they do, and I think that's a mistake because that makes them weak. That makes them ready for the fight that the union definitely will bring to them.
Well, I think it's a major component of what everybody says, the macro-micro issue. On the big picture, if you have a faith-based organization, they have a lot of qualities that are similar to the theories and the ideas that are espoused by the unions. But on a micro level, the difference between any employer and a union is always going to be that the unions, by definition and by law, has to protect all employees essentially the same. As opposed to a employer, whether you're faith-based or not, you really can implement a system where you work one-on-one with an individual, and that's what's accentuating the differences between a union and an employer. And if you're not using that tool then you're really losing out on your ability to make a difference. And that's where you can really strike the heart of an individual, and many individuals. If you have well-trained individuals, you have a corporate statement, you have a theory of how you're going to treat your employees, and you utilize it not necessarily inequality, but in a way that allows you to have flexibility within a system, then that will go a long way in trying to show your message to the employees of, we do care about you, an individual, even though we're a large entity, as opposed to the other one just says, well, we have a bylaws, we have a contract, and that's it. And that's where I've seen a lot of the differences, the micro and macro view of how you have flexibility within a large organization.
But you know what, Cliff? I tell you what, I agree with you 100%. But let me add this also, is that unions succeed when workers give up on management. So it's not something that happens, management is doing, the communication is great, but for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, they pulled back, and it's something that, and that's why sometimes we have a campaign, and when I was the organizing director, that would last over a year in healthcare, because you would have to establish that disconnect with the workers and management, but it's something that, once again, is something that the communication has to be consistent, and it's not something that's going to happen over a couple of months period. Unions succeed when workers no longer have faith in their management, and that doesn't happen overnight. So once again, all the things that we're talking about in the solutions are so simple. I mean, they are, but they're not. They sound so simple. And listen to Maureen. I mean, she's got a fantastic view of how, and I've known Maureen over several years, and I know how she deals with her employees, but that's not always the case. In fact, many times, and over 85 to 90% of the times when I talk to healthcare systems that get a petition, and one of the first questions I'll ask them is, were you surprised? What, did you see this coming? In 85 to 90% of the time, they tell me that, yeah, we're surprised. We didn't know. We didn't have any idea that this was happening. So it's a disconnect that happens over a long period of time. But people, once again, if you're disconnected, you don't see how disconnected you are.
Yeah, but I think that goes right to the point, isn't it? I mean, it's that, and you said it before, the corporate DNA, but it's like a diet. You can't simply go out there and say, for the next month, I'm going to go out and I'm going to stop eating this, and all of a sudden my whole life's going to turn around for the rest of my life. No, you got to change the entire way that you treat your body. You've got to eat differently, you've got to exercise differently, and that's what organizations don't do. And you said it. When a union's out there and they've got time, nothing but time and nothing but resources to go after your people and show that disconnect. If you're just going out for a short-term gap solution, you're going to do something that's going to revolutionize the world for the next 3 months. Well, guess what? You're going to lose. You have to change the way that you feed your employees. Essentially, feed them knowledge, feed them respect, do all the things Maureen was talking about, but you got to do it so it's sustainable. You can't do a short-term burnout system. It will not work in the long run. You will continue to be a target, and you will not succeed.
Well, it has to be consistent, and I would even take it a step further, Cliff, is that if you do initiate a program where you're communicating better, then you drop back, it makes it even harder for you to do it again. So once you start doing it, it's like rolling a boulder up a hill. If you stop even 2 inches from the top, it's going all the way back down, and it's going to be harder to move it back up that hill again. So you're spot on. It's got to be something that you dedicate yourself to, and it's got to be something that's consistent.
Or you lose
credibility. It's really got to be
credibility.
part of your DNA, of your culture.
Absolutely.
And from my perspective, so often and it has to be all senior leaders. Everyone has to participate in it, not just human resources. And so often I see when there's, the first kind of threat of a union or cards start showing up, you've already lost that battle once you get to that point, because it's too late, and you have to start it now, and you have to sustain it, and you have to make it. It has to be just a part of your culture. And frankly, it starts at the very, very top. It starts with the CEO and their perspective on employees, and the fact that, there's a lot of emphasis now on patient safety scores and a lot of emphasis on customer satisfaction in healthcare like never before. But if you don't get those employees engaged and part of the solutions and part of the everyday framework and making sure that they're really committed and engaged, you're never going to move all those other indicators. And
And-
it's a hard message sometimes for a CEO to hear.
And Maureen, you make a great point, because just like we were talking about earlier with these new micro units, if you don't get everybody to buy in across the board on your senior management staff, and there's one area that's lacking, that's the vulnerability. No matter how comprehensive your plan is and how effective it is with 80% of your staff, what's going to happen if they don't buy in?
And what do you have inside the facility? You have chaos, and within chaos, unions prosper.
We're just about out of time. I have one more question I want to get through real quick. Will healthcare continue to be a target for the unions? What do we see in the future with the unions and healthcare?
Well, it's going to grow. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Healthcare is going to continue to grow. People are getting older. People are getting more access to healthcare. People are demanding more. And as there's more demand, there are going to be more workers. There's more workers. There's going to be more money. That's going to go into the system. We're seeing changes in the law. It's going to go into effect specifically in January of 2014. And because there's a target, it's static, and there is income, it's obviously going to be a place that's been successful in the past, and they're going to move forward in the future.
With what's happening in January 2014?
Well, we know that the Obamacare is going to go into full force, and we're going to have a lot of changes as far as some of the rules, the IRS. So a lot of employers are either going to do one of two things. They're either going to drop and not have people, or you're going to have people potentially going to the exchanges. We'll see how that works, but significant changes into the healthcare laws are going to go into effect, and we're going to see either one of two things. People are going to be mandated to have health insurance. So if they get health insurance, guess what's going to happen? They're going to utilize it. If you're going to spend money for the first time in your life on something, you're more likely to use it. If you're more likely to use it, all of a sudden now you're a healthcare provider, you've got more people coming through the doors, you might start expanding. And I think it's a natural growth rate. If you have a growth industry, because of federal regulations, you're going to have unions go into that area. This is, other than trucking, which you're seeing obviously because we import so much and we buy so much in services, healthcare is the other growth industry that you can see. It's tangible, and there's a legitimate reason. It's not a market-based. This is a mandated base. This is a government-mandated reason why you can see. And if I'm a union and I'm looking at where should I go, I would rather have a place that I could bet on based on regulations that's going to grow. That's where I would spend my money, because it's an investment. You only have limited resources to invest in a campaign. And Rick just said it's expensive to organize, and it is. Why would I put it into a place that could close up shop, go to a different direction, outsource? I'll go into the bricks and mortar hospital. I'll go into the nursing home. I'll go into a place that I know is going to at least be the same, if not bigger, and I'll go after those employees, and I know the cash is there. That's why.
Millions of unorganized workers right now in healthcare. They estimated to be approximately $1 billion of union dues available every year. So yeah, absolutely, the money's there. Healthcare is the place to be, and that's why you see so many unions now in healthcare. It's not just the California Nurses Association. It's not just the SEIU. It's every union now is going into healthcare. You see United Food and Commercial Workers going after healthcare. UAW. The teams. Every union is because it's such a it's like a pot of gold, and they're going to go after them. And the tactics aren't going to change. They're going to try to disrupt the facility to get workers, to create chaos and get workers unhappy and angry with management, and that's how they organize.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Is that you don't have to change your tactics. If they always say, if you don't change, you're just gonna die. Well, in healthcare, I don't think you really have to change, because the problem is you could be less successful, but if the number of employees continue to increase, you're going to increase your stake. So it's a place where if you do change, you'll get better. If you stay the same, you're still going to grow. And that's what makes it such a great place, is that you could be inept and still potentially be successful, as opposed to in other areas.
You know what we used to call it? We used to call organizing in healthcare, because it was so easy to become embedded. We used to call it guerrilla warfare, because we could hide within the system, become embedded, and just attack as we see fit. And we could be in there for a year or longer and just wreck the relationship between management and the workers.
I agree with both of you. I think ease of access, the fact that anyone can go into that public institution and start working with the employees toward that goal of unionization, is going to continue. And I also think the merger and acquisition activity as a result of healthcare reform, the whole issue of job security, is going going to be paramount now in the healthcare industry. Even though it's a growth industry, lots of opportunities and positions and jobs and so on, I think you're going to find people, morphing into different, organizations and mergers and acquisitions, and I think that is going to drive a lot of the unionization effort. So I totally agree. It's going to continue to be a target moving forward.
Well, there you have it. The healthcare industry and unions is kind of like peanut butter and jelly. They're going to be together for a long time. What we really want you to do is take some time and think about how you can be proactive and what you can do right now to insulate you from the unions and to provide an avenue for your employees to really reach that level of engagement that will help them thrive to be advocates for your organization. Until next time, I'm Bob Carroll. I'd like to thank Cliff Hammond, Maureen Henson, and Rick Torres for joining us. This has been PS Labor Talk.